going to be talking about recognizing and responding to mental health crises. I'm just going to talk about myself a little bit. I'm somebody who struggled with my own mental health. I've struggled with thoughts of suicide, I've struggled with depression, and I've struggled with anxiety. It's something that a lot of people deal with in life, and I think it's important for you to know that this is something that we can work through and there's help out there for you. But I work for an agency called Suicide Prevention Services. We are located in Batavia, that's where our main office is, but we also have a location in Aurora. We're also a 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline call center. Have you heard of the 988 number? No, so that's okay. We'll talk more about that today, okay? But our agency's mission is to open minds, save lives, and restore hope through prevention, intervention, and postvention using education, like the presentation here today. And advocacy and collaboration, so working with other agencies, schools, and community organizations to help get the word out that you don't have to struggle alone if you're suffering, okay? All right, so it's important that we recognize our bodies are designed to live. Is that safe to say? Yeah. So what do you think our heart does? Yeah, absolutely. It pumps the blood to our vital organs to keep us alive, right? What about our lungs? Yeah, absolutely. So it helps send the blood throughout the body and the bloodstream, and it helps us breathe so that we can get that oxygen that's needed to live, right? Yeah. And then lastly, what is that? Yeah, what do you think our brain does? What does it do for us? Yeah, it helps us have these thoughts, right? Like, what homework do I have tonight? When do I have to have this homework in by? All of those things. Oh, what time is my dentist appointment? When is the next holiday? All of these important thoughts that we have, right? Yeah. It also produces emotions. Like I said, our bodies are designed to live. It's designed to help us function and keep moving forward, right? So do you know how our emotions can keep us safe? Sometimes when we're in a scary situation, our brain will have us feel these emotions, right? If we're in a situation where somebody's threatening us, we might start to feel one emotion, or we'll feel another emotion. Have you heard of the fight or flight response? Yeah, so this is a way our emotions can keep us safe. If we feel that or sense that we are in danger, our body will prepare us to defend and protect ourselves, right? Sometimes we'll fight, or we'll speak and use our words to fight, right? If we're being physically assaulted, we fight that way. If we're being verbally assaulted, sometimes we'll fight back with our words. Sometimes we'll run. Our body just says, let's get out of here, right? And again, it's all of a way to keep us safe. Have you heard of freeze? Yeah. So sometimes our body becomes so overwhelmed with these emotions that it doesn't know what to do, that it just freezes. Do you know something cool about possums is that they play dead? Did you know that? Yeah, so it's a way to keep them safe too, right? For example, they are an animal that gets hunted a lot. There'll be coyotes that go after them, or foxes, or big birds go after them. And a way to keep them safe when they sense danger is to play dead, right? And what that does is it deters those bears, those coyotes or those foxes from eating them. And it's their body's way of keeping them safe. For example, if we go to a basketball game and you see a moldy hamburger on the ground, do you think you'll eat it? No. And why do you think that is? It's moldy. Yeah, that's our brain telling us, hey, there's some telltale signs here that this might not be good, right? Yeah, so just like our brain and our body tells us, hey, maybe we shouldn't eat this moldy cheeseburger, our emotions can tell us, hey, when is the right time to fight, flight, or freeze in any dangerous situation. Sometimes, though, these thoughts that we have are not always true. They can be a danger to us. We might start having these thoughts and these emotions, like feeling like you're defeated, feeling as if you're trapped, wishing you were dead, feeling like a burden to others, wishing I could go to sleep and not wake up, wanting all of my problems to go away. And sometimes when we're overwhelmed with emotions, our brain will start producing these thoughts because it's not too sure how to cope. It's not too sure how to help itself. So it produces these thoughts that can sometimes feel as though we would be better off dead. And so sometimes when someone feels like they would be better off dead, they're having thoughts of suicide. Have you heard that word before? Yeah. Awesome. So this is the definition of suicide. It's the intention to kill oneself, acting on those thoughts, which then results in death. So when we're using the word suicide, we want to notate a couple of things. Suicide is a medical word. It's a word in a way people die. So it's a word like doctors use like cancer or heart disease or lung disease or diabetes, right? It's a medical word. It's a way people die. People can die from cancer, people can die from accidents, people can die a number of ways, which includes suicide. When you are talking with somebody and they mention, oh, I have cancer, is that something you take seriously, or is that something you kind of joke about? Seriously? Yeah. And just like we take that seriously, we want to make sure we're using the word suicide correctly. So we've got an example here. If I come into school on Monday next week, where you go to your middle school, and I decide to pull a fire alarm every period, first period, would you evacuate the building for safety? Yes. What about second period if I decided to pull it again? Not so much, right? What about third period? At that point, would you still evacuate? No. So what I'm trying to tell you here is a fire alarm is meant to be taken seriously, right? It's meant to keep us safe and let us know, hey, there's an emergency, we need to evacuate and get ourselves to somewhere safe. So just as we take fire alarms seriously, we want to make sure we're using the word suicide seriously, because it is something that can be life or death situation. You've heard the story of the boy who cried wolf, right? The boy who cried wolf is a story about a boy who was in charge of taking care of the village's flock of sheep. But he got very bored, so he decided to tease the villagers and say, hey, there's a wolf. And all the villagers would run up and see that there's no wolf, and they'd get angry at him. He did this so many times that eventually the villagers stopped believing him. And what this meant was that when there was an actual wolf and the boy decided to cry wolf, no villagers came, and the flock of sheep was injured by the wolf. So the importance of this story is to make sure we're not misusing these words. What's important to also take away from this is that struggle is something that happens in life, unfortunately. We're not always guaranteed an easy path or an easy track of life, and there are bound to be struggles, but we want to make sure when we're talking about our struggles, we're using the right terminology. Make sense? Awesome. In this presentation, we're going to talk about 3 myths, okay? Can you kind of help me understand why this is not true, why this is a myth? A suicidal person wants to die and feels there's no turning back. Any thoughts as to why that's not necessarily true? Is there a way to turn back if you're struggling? Yeah. Are there people you can reach out to when you're struggling? Yeah. And do you think somebody who's feeling really, really depressed or sad, do you think they really want to die? No, correct, that's true. Let's think of it this way. Let's make it make sense a little bit more, okay? Let's say I break my ankle playing my favorite sport, baseball. Do you think if I break my ankle, I want my whole foot to disappear? No. What would I do in that case? What would I do to help myself?
Ask for help?
Yeah, who would I go to in that situation if my ankle's broken? Where?
A nurse?
Yeah, a nurse, a doctor, my parents, because they could take me to the hospital, right? When we have a broken bone, or if we're sick with like COVID or the flu or an infection, we go to the doctor, right? Because we know that they can help us get better, right? And then, so let's continue on with that broken ankle. So we'll go to the doctor, we'll go to the emergency room, they'll give us a cast, right? And then they'll say, well, I'm just an emergency doctor. You need to go see a specialist, somebody who specializes in bones and the healing of bones, right? So then we'll go to them. They'll walk us through the whole process of becoming healed. And then chances are they'll say, hey, let's go to a physical therapist, because that will help us regain motion and strengthen those muscles so that we can walk normally again, right? Make sense? Yeah, so then what they'll do is they'll say, here are some exercises to do at home, like stretching, meditation, all of that. And sometimes they'll prescribe us medications to deal with, the potential of infection that can happen sometimes when we have a broken bone. It might help with the pain management if we're struggling with a lot of pain. But the same goes with our mental health. If we're struggling, sometimes we need to go see a doctor. And then it'll tell us to go to a specialist like myself. I'm a mental health therapist or a psychiatrist. And that psychiatrist can be somebody that prescribes that medication to us to help us on that road to recovery, okay? Therapists then might say, hey, let's do some coping skills or coping strategies at home. Is that something you've heard of? Yeah, so that's something we'll talk about later on in the presentation, but that's the goal, is ultimately to get us the help that we deserve and we need when we are struggling. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to get the help that we need, or how are we going to help somebody else who needs that help that they need? Well, we can ACT, which is ask, care, tell, and treat. And so we're going to talk about that further, but first, we want to start by knowing the warning signs. One way to think about warning signs, or warning signs, sorry, is to look at the word careless. The word careless is as it sounds. It's somebody who's careless about their actions. Sometimes people who start to care less about themselves, they'll start to partake in like drugs and alcohol. They won't do their homework. They won't show up to class or practice or their favorite sports. Sometimes they'll get in legal trouble. Sometimes they'll start stealing, or they're caring less about themselves, about the people around them, and about the world around them. So we can be careless in the way we behave and the way we act, but we can also be caring less in the way we take care of ourselves and the world around us and the people who love us. Does that make sense? Yeah. So here are some other warning signs that we can look for when somebody is struggling, or if we're struggling ourselves with our mental health. Like he said, talking about wanting to die, sometimes people will be very blatant. And that's why we want to go back and take that seriously, like that slide I talked about, is because sometimes kids can misuse that. They can say, oh, life is so hard, I just wish I wasn't alive. And sometimes they don't necessarily mean that. They're just really struggling and they don't know how else to talk about their struggles. So they misuse suicide and the words people use to talk about suicide. So that's why we want to take it seriously, because someone who is really struggling and talking about it might not get taken seriously. Does that make sense? Awesome. Talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live. Talking about or feeling like a burden on others. Isolating or withdrawing from friends, like you mentioned. Sometimes those who are struggling sleep too little or sleep far too much. They seem tired all the time, no matter how much sleep they get. Giving away possessions is a big one. That can kind of be like, whoa, what's going on? They're giving away their favorite video game. Why would that happen, right? Changes in eating habits. That's another sign too. Sometimes we just stop eating because we stop caring, right? Trouble focusing. This one, change in appearance and dress, is one I really like to highlight. Sometimes people can go from dressing up on a daily basis to not caring. Again, going back to that word of caring less. So they'll go from wearing dresses every day to sweatpants and a hoodie. That might be an indicator that something's going on and give us a little bit of insight that, hey, maybe we should ask questions. Maybe we should kind of step in and see what's going on. And lack of interest in things once favored. What's important, though, is to trust your gut. You are in a very changing time of life, right? You're growing up pretty fast. You're experiencing new things. And what's important to know is that some changes are normal. Some changes are just a part of life and growing up, but sometimes they're not. So if you don't feel like something is sitting right, or you're not sure if what you're going through is normal, don't be afraid to ask. It's important to just reach out for help if you feel like you need it. You know yourself best. That's what I like to say, is that we as humans know ourselves best. And so if it doesn't feel right, we ought to speak up, because we deserve the help and care that we deserve and need. Again, trust your gut. If you feel like something is wrong with your friend, or there's something different going on with your friend, ask if they're okay. It's just a good thing to do in general too, because it just lets them know you care about them, right? If you are noticing these signs in yourself, like I said, or feel like something is wrong or different, trust yourself. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. That's what adults are there for. Sometimes adults can be a bit dismissive. They go, oh, it's a phase of life. This is just a part of growing up. And that's something we'll talk about later. But again, trust yourself. If it doesn't feel right or you're really not sure, just ask. Second myth. People who talk about suicide rarely or never die by suicide. This one is where we kind of get a little sticky. I think it's the wording, but do some people die by suicide? Yeah, so that's why it's the myth. It's this word rarely. People who talk about suicide rarely die by suicide. Statistics show that if somebody's talking about it, they've seriously thought about dying by suicide or are really asking and reaching out for help. So let's kind of explore this more and why this is not true. In 2023, over 49,000 people died by suicide in the United States. This is the Philadelphia Phillies baseball stadium. And that capacity, the max number of people that can be in that stadium at one time is 43,651. So it's about 6,000 more people who have died by suicide. So take this whole stadium full of people and then 6,000 more, and that's how many people in 2023 have died by suicide in the United States. So that's why we like to give these presentations, is to show the number and show that this is something we want to take seriously, because people do get really in deep with their mental health, and we want to let them know that there's help out there. Further looking at statistics, there's one death every 11 minutes. Now, in your school, how many minutes are in a class period? 30.
1 hour and 50 minutes.
Okay, 1 hour and 30 minutes. So that's 90 minutes, right? So if we look at this, that would equate to about 11 people within one period of your class have died by suicide, statistically. So that's a big number, right? While you're sitting in class, there are people out there struggling so much that they're making these choices to kill themselves, to die by suicide, because they don't know that there's help out there for them. Again, further looking at statistics, 13.2 million adults seriously think about or have thought about suicide. 3.8 have made a plan for suicide, and 1.6 million have attempted suicide. In kids from aged 15 to 24, homicide is the third leading cause of death, while suicide is the second leading cause of death. So again, we're just kind of highlighting the importance of suicide and why it is so significant. And suicide is something that we don't talk enough about amongst young people, and they're one of the hardest hit generations with this cause of death. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of what it is all about. And that's why we're here talking about it. All right. So we've learned about the warning signs and we've talked about the statistics. So we want to act. We want to ask, care, tell, and treat. Remember that slide? A few slides back? Yeah. Okay. So first we're going to ask. How do you ask? We want to start by saying, hey, I'm kind of worried about you. And notate some of those things that you recognize. Hey, I noticed you're not eating lunch. Hey, I noticed that you're not wearing what you usually wear to school. Hey, I noticed you're not showing up to practice. And then we want to be direct. We want to be direct and go, hey, are you thinking about suicide? We don't want to kind of roundabout or sugarcoat or kind of try not to say the word. We want to be direct. We want to make sure that we're going, hey, are you having thoughts of suicide? Because it helps them recognize that we're paying attention and that we care. If they say that they are having thoughts of suicide, we don't want to act shocked or we don't want to criticize. We want to let them know that we're proud of them for telling you. It can be very difficult to let somebody know that you're struggling. And when they do open up and are vulnerable and really do take the time to say, hey, yeah, I'm struggling, I need some help, we want to applaud them for that, because that's a big step. That's one of the hardest things to do when getting help, is admitting that you need help. And we also don't want to act shocked or criticize, because it can shut off all conversation. That can really just tell somebody, oh, they don't really care, I'm not going to tell them anymore. So we want to be kind of gentle about the way we go about it, but direct. Does that make sense? Okay. So we've asked, and then here's a myth about asking. Asking someone if they're thinking about suicide will put the idea in their head. If it's a thought they already had, right, we're not going to put it more in their head, right? I always give the example, if I tell you to go out and buy a pink elephant, are you going to go out and buy a pink elephant? No, right? Doesn't make it appear any more than it's already there. And if it's not in their head, that doesn't mean it's something that's going to automatically go, oh, that's the answer, right? A lot of times if we ask and they go, no, that could be a way to open a conversation. Sometimes people will ask others questions to open the door to conversation. Sometimes if somebody's struggling, they'll go, hey, have you ever had thoughts of suicide? And they'll go, no, why? And that can be the way to open up the door to conversation even. So regardless of this is false because we're not putting it into somebody's head more. And it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to go and try to die by suicide. Essentially what it is it's opening the door to conversation so that we can make it easier to talk about. So we've asked, now we're going to care. We're going to care by listening. We want to listen and take what they're saying seriously. We don't want to judge. Again, we don't want to judge. We don't want to criticize. And we don't want to be like, well, if you showed up to school, that might help. Well, if you did your homework, that might help. We don't want to give that quick advice. Because again, that will shut off the conversation and probably lead them to not want to talk anymore, right? And we want to let them know you have time to listen. We want to let them know that we're not just asking and walking away. We want to let them know we're here and we want to help you work through this. We're here for the long haul. Be supportive. This can be in any kind of way. This could be like, I will walk with you to go talk to an adult. I'll sit with you at lunch every day. Whatever it is, just be there, be supportive, and be a caring friend. Ask, care, now we're going to tell and treat. So who do you think we should tell if you or one of your friends is struggling with thoughts of suicide? Yep. Yeah. So we want to urge them to talk to an adult, but adults can be intimidating sometimes, right? They can be scary. So if they say, I don't want to go alone, offer to go with them. Safety in numbers is something I like even doing as an adult myself. Like I said, adults can be intimidating and scary, so we want to let them know that, hey, if you need someone to go with you, we'll go with you, okay? We don't want to promise to keep it a secret. Do you know why? That, yeah. And it could also be a matter of life and death, right? It could be, if we just say, yep, we'll keep it a secret, it could mean that something bad happens. So, like we like to say, it's easier to lose a friendship and repair it than to lose a friend permanently. So if they won't go to an adult, you need to be the one to go to an adult. And again, it can be scary, but we want to make sure you go to a trusted adult, somebody that you really feel comfortable going with, whether it's a parent, teacher, guidance counselor, best friend's parent, coach, regardless. And if you're the one struggling, we want to let you know that it's okay. Like I said, struggle happens in life, unfortunately. We're not guaranteed a clear path to success. We're going to have to jump over some hurdles. And so it's okay to struggle. It's okay to not be okay. Lots of people around the world struggle with their mental health. I'm somebody who struggled with my mental health. And I got the help I deserved and needed to get better. You should ask for help. And you can ask for help and you should ask for help. Just like we're going to an adult for a friend, we're going to go to an adult for ourselves. And again, if you don't want to go alone, hey, best friend, will you go with me to talk to my parents or whatever? That safety number can help make it easier. And like I said, you know yourself best. So listen and know your body. Learn to know and listen to your body. Like I said, you're changing. A lot's going to happen in these next few years. Some of these changes are normal, but some of them aren't. And so if it doesn't feel right, it's okay to speak up and say, hey, I've got a question, or hey, I need help. Here's who we can go to: teachers, social workers, counselors, office staff, coaches, friends. Outside of school, parents, siblings, family, friends, doctor or nurse, like you mentioned. They'll have school counselors and social workers that you can talk to too. And sometimes if you don't know where they're located, teachers will let you know where they're located too. But this isn't just for you. This is for if you know friends who are struggling too. You could go, hey, I know somebody who's struggling. Can you tell me who the social workers are so I can go talk to them? Perfect. But any of these school districts, they all have designated teams that will help you if you're struggling with your mental health. So that's important to know. So like I mentioned, on your bracelet, it even has the 988 number. And so what 988 is it's a suicide and crisis lifeline. It's like calling 911 for emergency help. 988 is for those who are struggling with their mental health and need somebody to talk to. It's anonymous. So if you ever need someone to talk to and don't want them to know who you are, you don't have to give them your name. You don't have to let them know who you are. It's pretty cool about that. It's full of people who will care and listen and kind of help you work through what's going on. I used to work on the Lifeline myself. I've had a numerous array of calls. I even had one person call who said, I have landed my dream job and I have nobody else to tell it to. And I just needed to talk to somebody, so I figured I'd call 988. But then you have kids. I've talked to young kids who are in middle school too, who are just like, I'm really struggling with social studies and I just don't know what to do. And I've helped them talk to their parents about their struggles, and their parents have been like, yep, we'll go talk to the school and we'll get it figured out. So it's full of people who are willing to help you with wherever you are in life and whatever you're struggling with. It doesn't have to be that you're immediately suicidal. It could just be that you're having a really rough day, or you want to complain about mom and dad, or you want to complain about your best friend. Somebody will be there to answer your call. We don't call emergency services right away. That is our last resort. And a lot of people, and a lot of young people, fear that. As soon as they call, we're dispatching emergency services. That's our last resort. We want to de-escalate the situation and get you to a safe place where you feel like you can handle it on your own. But if it gets to a point where we don't feel you can keep yourself safe, we'll call emergency services, but we'll let you know about it first. All right, so when we go to an adult and ask them for help, like I said, sometimes adults, when we're growing up, can be pretty dismissive of what we're feeling because they have life experience, unlike we do when we're younger. So they can say, oh, this is a part of life. This is a part of growing up. This is what it's going to be like. But that's the important thing, is when you know your body, you can go to them and say, hey, I know something's wrong. I need to talk about this now. So we want to make sure we tell them, you need to listen to me and take what I'm saying seriously. And we also want to, just like we don't want to give somebody quick advice, we don't want to receive quick advice, right? It's like when we failed a test and our best friend goes, well, did you study? How does that make you feel? Yeah, it doesn't make you feel great, right? Yeah, so we don't want the quick advice and we don't want judgment, just like we don't want to give it to somebody when we're helping them that's struggling. And just like we're asking somebody if they're having thoughts of suicide directly, we want to tell adults, hey, I'm having thoughts of suicide. Again, it's direct and it's gonna get us to the help we need faster and more efficiently, which is the best thing in this scenario. And then we wanna follow up and check in. We wanna continue the act of being there for them and yourself. And we wanna ask how they're doing regularly. This can be a text message, phone call, this could be in the hallway at school or in class. We don't just wanna be like, here's help, good luck. We wanna kind of let them know, hey, you have a support system from beginning to end, and that I'm not going to leave you. It's that support system that can be so drastic in our ability to heal and get better. And knowing that we have a support system tends to help us get better faster. And sometimes it takes a while for those who are struggling with mental health to notice a change. And so what's important is if we're seeing some of these similar signs or things aren't changing, we want to check back in and go, hey, everything okay? Do we need to get you back to an adult to get you help? So that's why it says follow up with an adult if you continue to notice warning signs in yourself and others. So what if you're the one struggling? How can somebody else help me with how I'm feeling? When we stay with those thoughts and hold on to them, they get a little bit heavy, right? So what's important is that we're able to talk to somebody safe and somebody we trust to kind of help us feel better about it, right? And therapists like myself, we're like coaches. We're going to work with you to strengthen that mental health and develop skills and techniques that work for you when you are struggling and there's not an adult or a best friend to turn to. We want to make sure that you can lean on yourself if you are struggling, but also feel confident in being able to help yourself. So it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes consistency and practice, right? Just like sports, mental health, and going to therapy and finding what works for you is just like practicing and getting better at a sport. It takes time. So coping skills are things you can do on your own to comfort yourself. They're different for everybody. It could be writing a to-do list. Some people are really organized and need that to-do list to help them feel organized and help them feel a little bit more confident in moving forward with their day. Sometimes it's as easy as stepping outside and counting to 10, taking deep breaths, whatever. Exercising, a hobby. I like to crochet. I like to color. Listening to music's a big one too. Playing sports. Yeah, so coping skills are different for everybody, but there are a ton for everybody. So we've learned how to act. We've learned how to ask, care, tell, and treat, okay? Yeah, what we want to make sure that we do is if an adult doesn't listen, we keep going to an adult until one does listen, okay? Regardless of how many adults it takes, we want to make sure that we're going and getting the help, regardless of how long it takes, because everybody deserves it, right? We're going to go over one of these, but this is essentially a story. Layla hasn't been the same since her mom died. It's been especially tough because she doesn't get along with her dad. For months, she's been saying that if it weren't for her boyfriend, Dylan, she wouldn't have anyone who cares about her. But Dylan just broke up with her and Layla is devastated. She talks about needing to end her pain and last night told you where the key to her diary was in case anyone wants to read it. And then the last word is afterwards. So can you tell me any warning signs in this? Yeah, she's giving the key to her diary away, so giving away possessions. What else do you see in here? Yeah, needing to end her pain. That's kind of an indirect way of saying, hey, I'm really struggling, right? Do you think she has a good support system? No. Yeah, because her boyfriend, Dylan, broke up with her and she isn't really close to her dad. And her mom died, right? And then there's the word down here that got cut off that says afterwards. That could be a way of foreshadowing that something is going to happen or potentially happen too. Oliver comes from a family of perfectionists. In Oliver's family, the expectation is that he'll go to an Ivy League college just like his parents and sister did. But he just took his SATs for the third time and his scores are not high enough. He thinks his grades might drop this semester too. He's so worried about not getting into a top college and letting his family down that he hasn't been able to sleep or eat. His parents also grounded him for getting the family car into a fender bender. Without access to a car, he lost his part-time job delivering pizzas, and he keeps saying how he isn't sure how he's going to continue on. What are some warning signs you can picture or pinpoint here? Yeah, not eating or sleeping, that's a big one. What else? Yeah, he's not sure how he's going to continue on, right? That again could be kind of an indicator that he's not thinking positively about himself or his situation. One I really like to pinpoint here too is he got the family car into a fender bender, which could be an indicator of some careless. It's a car accident, yeah, but it could be an indicator of some careless behavior, like we talked about, where they're driving recklessly or not safely, right? Yeah. So that is all I got for you today. Thank you so much.